on Hillis Terrace by Vaith Road to drain that stream across. It goes behind Marlene's house, okay? So if you look at the different color, this color, you see the lines with the elevations. Above that, there's no elevations. So basically, people, Sutton Park, Deer Court, all those houses through this whole area may be paying flood insurance when they don't have to. This is much more complex, and I'm trying to say it to you as simply as we can. We started this study, how many years ago?
That box culvert design was back in the 90s.
In the 90s. We stopped it. We haven't gone forward with it. I'd like the board at our next meeting to consider a resolution to direct that we go forward with that study. That's step one of several steps that I think we need to take to start addressing the drainage problems.
And
Now, we've all had
Bill,
complaints.
stop 1 second. You're talking drainage or flooding?
well, that's the thing for the for this first part of the study. It would be to determine the elevations of that zone A.
Now, when we complete the map, we do the study according to FEMA standards. We send what we do to FEMA. They redraw their maps based on that. Our citizens, our residents, our taxpayers then file a certificate of elevation, and they're off the floodplain.
Okay,
That could be as much as $400 or $500 a month to some of these people.
how long is the study going to take, and how much is the cost?
The estimate for cost is somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. That's doing it in-house, farming out some of the.
If we did it in-house, it would take about a year, considering all the other stuff that our engineers are doing.
Have we had FEMA here at all to actually look at the maps? Because one of the neighboring towns actually met FEMA, had FEMA come in,
We went.
met them in town hall, and they worked on some of the issues that they had drainage or flooding within so many feet on both sides of the creek. One side was so much higher, they took them right off the map.
We
They
went-
didn't need to
we
go
went-
through
we
the whole
went
study
down.
process.
And this is a plan, this is coming from what they said to us. This is probably the least expensive, least regulation burdened way to try and start giving some relief. This flood insurance, we can have residents that have lived in their houses for 30 years. And now it's time to retire, and they go to sell the house, and a new family wants to buy the house, and the mortgage people say you need flood insurance. And depending upon where it is, it can be $200, $300, up to $600 a month for estimates.
There was a recent hard storm that I know that, it seems like that Vassar Road area has had a few real powerful storms come through there. And it's been from the years I've lived here. There was a recent heavy storm that had flooded I know it's north of this, but it had flooded that mall, apparently, where the Stewarts is and such, and the McGee's and the Genos. Did these folks suffer any of the flooding issues from there? Again, it's been very dry. It was a fast, hard rain. It sort of hit and ran. Wasn't a chance for saturation, but any of these folks have any flooding issues?
One of the homeowners along Sutton Park Road called me and asked me to stop by. And he said to me, when we first moved here, there was a little stream in the back. And now it's 6 feet deep duck pond. Autumn, all the housing in Autumn, all those were put in. Just like I was here, working here when Raker Road was done, and I went in Sutton Park. The builders were interested in building the houses. What we have is we have 50 years of development where only recently have we paid attention to the drainage when a project comes in front of us. Remember when Honda was here about the parking lots, and I started in on them because it has to be a porous surface where the water goes. Ann is on infrastructure with me. She's right next door to my ward. Some of my water comes from her ward. Some of my water, I'm taking personal possession of the second ward, goes into her ward. Some of her water comes out of the fifth ward.
Yeah.
So it's something that we need to address, and I'd like to do it in a series of steps, bites at the apple, trying to keep it as much in-house as we can to minimize the costs, and actually start a plan. Now, I'm told by the experts, the only way you fix this kind of a problem is you start where the water ends, at Wappingers Creek, and you work your way back upstream, this one piece of water starts up at the Girl Scout property by Doreen's property. We call it the Girl Scout property. It's the one that's developed with 40 acres were given to us because it's a wetland and a marsh and a swamp. That water goes downhill through all these residential areas and eventually goes underneath Vassar Road by Hillis Terrace and down into the creek. To start to repair it, Mark Pfeiffer has been absolutely tremendous. Every time I call him, he goes out and he tries to fix something. So something that's almost 1.25 miles long, he does little by little in 50-foot sections that doesn't last more than a couple of years. So I think when we finally do the map plan and report, we'll actually show that we can tackle this problem slowly. I think the taxpayers and the residents, everybody, if we say we're going to do it slowly, little by little each year, I think you'd have support, particularly from the houses that all of a sudden showed up in the flood area. Now, Ann has some in her ward, and Joe has some in his ward. And it all seems to be the same kind of thing. When we built neighborhoods, we disrupted the water flow. Maybe we put in an 8-inch or a 16-inch corrugated pipe underneath one of the roads. But we never really addressed it from where it has to go, working your way slowly back up to where it starts. So I'd like to put a resolution in front of us for our next meeting to allow us to go forward with the study of this particular section from the Girl Scout property down. And let's get the study. Let's do it to the FEMA standards and submit it to FEMA.
Bill, before I'd be in favor of that, I'd really like to sit down and get a grasp that if we're going to do a study, we're not going to pick one section. We do a study of the whole area. I'd really like to sit down with a discussion either on the phone with FEMA to see where we're going, to make sure we can't alleviate some of these issues with them, prior to that, before we go and put that kind of money into it. Because I know Mike's got flooding in his ward, we have flooding all over. I don't want to pick one section of the town if we decide there's a lot of other sections.
We talked about that, as a matter of fact, in infrastructure today, where we talked about doing the entire watershed. It costs us a lot of money.
Yeah, we can.
Little by little. Now, we're at the meeting, and I said, look, here's a certificate of elevation application from one of our residents, somebody in my ward, and it says he's in the flood plain by 0.2 of an inch. 0.2 of an inch. So the guy says, well, you can't say that you heard it from me, but tell him to go out and get some mulch and put it around his house and make the application. That's really wrong. That makes no sense. If we're going to do it, I think we need to do it. And Jay, we can sit on the phone. We can get Sean with us. We can do whatever you want to do.
Because if we could eliminate some of these without doing a study, the study would go further in another direction.
Yeah.
And some of these, I know one of the neighboring towns met with them, and one of the creeks, they had just looked at the creek bed and they realized
Yeah.
the creek goes in the opposite direction of what they were thinking of, and they had it wrong, and they took 20-some houses out of the floodplain.
I have 8 residents that have come forward in my ward. And by the way, if anybody in the ward is watching and you've gone through the elevation process, please send me an email or send me a copy of it here at Town Hall so I can start building this. And if you have drainage problems, it impacts us with inflow and infiltration. It's a consistent problem that continues. And the only way we're going to fix it is to start the walk. I'll gladly sit and we can call FEMA. We can do whatever you want to do.
Great suggestion,
And
Supervisor.
Sean, you should touch base with Bob Gray, because I think Bob has had a lot to do with the change that was in the town of Wappingers.
Correct. I believe those areas were Zone AEs, where FEMA has a lot of topography information, and that's a more detailed study. With the Zone As, they didn't do a study. There's actually, if you submit an analysis of a Zone A, there's actually no fee from FEMA because they consider it an assistance.
Great.
And you give them elevations. Now, it's really important, though, that with this study, if we determine the zone to have elevations and we designate elevations, some people may not automatically get out of the flood zone. They still have to do their own
They
certificate.
have to do their application.
We might find that the flood footprint is actually larger in some areas. And that should be made aware, that this isn't just a study and then everyone's going to get out.
Yeah.
It's going to be we're going to do it the right way, according to their guidelines. And I think there's a point where we have to look at the whole town,
Oh, we do. We have-
each one of the sections, because it's the same problem. We have had the development go on and disrupted the normal drainage. I mean, when this was,
Yeah,
God's
but
country-
we don't need to do a study of the whole town.
No, not the whole town.
No,
We should have a
basically, what we
process.
need to do is check out the different wards, and I'm sure, I've heard complaints from constituents who have drainage problems, and that's our best source of information. Pull them all together and see if we can't work out a plan where we have phases over a long period of time and start correcting these problems, because part of my problem is we have water draining off of the golf course that comes down behind some houses, heads across Backenkill Road through the high school, and then on through the Fifth Ward. And the pipes they put in for the drainage are too small.
Right.
So when we get these monster storms, things start backing up, and it backs up into my ward and into their basements. So that's the problem. So we need to take a look, and, fixing stuff in my ward isn't going to do any good until we look at the problem in the Fifth Ward and start backwards and work our way up. So we're not saying a study done of everything. And also, I didn't think we had to go all the way to the Girl Scout property. How far are we actually going to look?
that's all Zone A.
The study wasn't going to go all the way into the property. It's
didn't
going to end at the Girl Scout line.
Okay.
Because there aren't any residents.
No, and also,
upstream.
doesn't that go through Vassar Farms too? There should be a whole section in there.
It's the same water flow.
Yeah, I know it's the same water flow. I'm just trying to make the study as small as possible where,
Well, and Third Ward has the problems, well, Roachdale Park, East,
Yeah.
we've got problems over there as well. So again, even before we get to yours, if you're trying to
Right.
look at this whole thing,
Yeah, and-
it's a monumental task.
it is.
I think you're
I'll
right,
take-
Supervisor, by
yeah.
saying
What I think-
we need to get FEMA involved and get more
do it
FIFO
in
involved
phases.
and keep rolling with where we're going with this. Sean, you're doing a great job with it. We appreciate your help, appreciate your
Yeah, I
guidance.
was going to say, thank you for breaking
Yes.
this, because, what FEMA is, and I'm going through now in the city of Poughkeepsie as well, when FEMA, they see a puddle of water, right away they put flood zone map. And one of the things about the residents is that, sometimes insurance won't even cover for that. In addition, even if you get a stamp from a local engineering, that's not also recognized by the insurance. So until you have the stamp from the actual FEMA, you're not out of the woods,
Exactly.
yeah.
The whole
So-
study would be to make a LOMA.
Right, so you might, as a resident, you might spend money to get a certification, but then here comes the insurance and say, you know what, that doesn't help.
Exactly.
Right.
And you spend money for nothing. So I want to thank you, Councilman Carlos, to bring this to the table, because it is an issue. And like I said, FEMA just sees a puddle of water and it says, oh, flood zone.
Well, I'd like to
big-
get,
it's a
I'd like to
big
get the permission to go forward on the agenda for our next meeting. Available to Jay, we'll work out whatever we can work out. If any of you have drainage, and we all have it, give me a list, send me an email and tell me, so we can start to actually build up what the problem is, and then work out a long-term phased solution that's going to be going on long after none of us are on this board and there's different people sitting here.
Well, the DeGarmo Bridge, that obviously was an issue from the flooding, and they're addressing that now. So there's a part to it. So, if we look at it pretty closely, we can see there are some things that are being done towards this. So I think your effort's valiant, and I think we should follow through with it. I unfortunately will be on vacation next week, so I'll miss that, but I do like the idea
You'll
of
be here
looking
in
into it.
spirit, Joseph.
Yeah,
I did ask.
teleconference me in from Maine.
No, and I like also the thing that, sometimes if there is a flood in a property, FEMA will blame insurance will blame FEMA, so it's like never win-win situation for any residents. So
Yeah.
it's like fighting City Hall, as they say.
I think it's our job to go against things like FEMA when it's our residents, our constituents, our taxpayers.
I wouldn't call it going against, I'd call it working with.
Working
Working with to
right.
correct the problem.
Okay.
No, whenever,
We'll be working with them very
whenever
closely.
anybody does a big, huge project like this, which FEMA did, all over, did these maps, it doesn't make them 100% accurate. As Sean said, some could go in our favor and some could go the other direction.
The people we spoke to at the meeting, FEMA's meeting it was in White Plains, this is not just us. This kind of stuff goes on all over.
Oh, it's all over.
And we have a history of development that's gone on, and we didn't take a breath at some point and say, where's the water going? We're doing that now, I think, but we still have all the problems from the past.
Well, Sean, some of the things that I've seen you do that I've been privy to seeing you do with the town, you've done great jobs with it. So to know you're in on this, I appreciate it from the standpoint of your experience. So we'd love to hear what you got to say. And Councilman Carlos, thank you too.
Thank you, Joe.
Bill, Jay's going to ask, he's going to give a couple phone calls to Senator Serino, see if there's any money available that we could apply for to help get this project going underway.
When we get to that point, I also want to get the two congressmen, because we have some in some district to the south and the other district to the north. If there's any money that can help us with, I mean, they help us with roads. Do you know that FEMA will pay for a dike, but they won't help us clean streams? Does that make sense?
Well, stream cleaning sometimes causes just as much damage as good.
It could.
gotta be
It could.
careful.
You got to do it the right way. You got to have the permits. You got to do it exactly the way it's supposed to be
The
done.
bottom line is a floodplain for a reason, because it's to hold the water back so it doesn't flood everybody down below.
Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, now we'll go to committee reports. Finance Committee, as of now, there's nothing to report. Fire Advisory,
I have nothing to report.
Government Operations,
Nothing to report.
Land Use and Planning.
I'm not sure if Mr. Sifon want to talk, because I was absent at the last meeting, or
What did we talk about?
A couple of projects that were going on. Really,
Yeah.
no major decisions have been made yet that will bring to the board.
No?
Nothing to report.
Recreation, the Little League is getting ready for the end of the month to have their series here. They'll be hosting up in Southgate. Hagan Drive has had some vandalism issues in Hagan. They were destroying the fences.
Oh.
So Brian and Tom are working with the police department to address the issue over there with some extra patrols to hopefully straighten that out. Day camp is full, going fantastic. So far as the concerts in the park we're having this year, we've had a good turnout. Close to 200 people were there last night. Last week was about 150.
That's great.
The senior picnic is coming up at the end of the month. And we had some issues at the swimming lessons down in the old JCC building, and they opened back up today. They had some chlorine issues. They had a bacterial issue there. They've addressed it and had a few communication problems. They're new to the issue, and we're new to what was going on down there. So we've addressed that with them, and they opened back up today. So we're hoping everything's going forward with them. I don't know if it was a learning curve, but I'd rather err on caution that they closed for a couple extra days to make sure everything was safe for the patrons that were down there using it. But we're up and running. I talked to Tom at the end of the day, and everything seems to be back to where it belongs down there. As far as the seniors go, everything's going good in the senior center. We announced last month we had a birthday party, 102-year-old party. Technology.
Keeps you alive.
Nothing to report this month, probably next year. Or it'll be
Water.
September.
Water, sewer, and highway.
I just gave it to you.
Okay. We are at the end of our agenda. We have a motion to open up for public comment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anybody like to speak to the town board can come up. Can we ask them if they could please keep it to just 3 minutes? Doreen, come on up.
I have to address Councilman LaFleur's comment that he made several times about FEMA and your puddle of the flood zone.
Over here. Should we have her over here?
Hey, Doreen, why
It's
don't
not
you-
working, Doreen.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Do you mind sitting over there?
Let's see if it works.
We have some problems with our bikes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Finally got that going. But
All mics are bad.
Hey,
All right, Councilman Lepore's comment that FEMA sees a puddle and calls it a flood zone, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Maybe there's some problems with some of the maps, but I mean, that's like when you talk about wetlands, I say, oh, a puddle in your driveway is considered a wetland. No, it's if it has the proper vegetation, soil, and hydrology, then it's a wetland. I mean, that's just a ridiculous statement. And part of the problem with this drainage is that over the years, people have built in wetlands and in floodplains. And they're there for a reason. Like Councilman Baisley said, they're there to accept water. They're there to slow the water flow. So when you just have mindless development, then you end up with these problems, and then you say, oh, you have to clean the stream, which I'm glad that Councilman Baisley pointed out that could cause even more problems. So we shall see what this results in, but you know, I really think you should proceed carefully before you spend all this money. Thank you.
Agree, Doreen. And I think that FEMA has made some mistakes, and I think we should address it with them on a one-on-one prior to going forth.
I agree, Supervisor. Here
Victor,
it comes.
we could have gave you that seat in the beginning, Victor. Welcome back.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Mr. Bailey, for calling me in the hospital a number of times, and Mike visited me a couple times down at Westchester Med. Thank you very much. I got a lot of nice letters from the supervisor's office and people in the town sent a lot of nice letters to my home and to the hospital, and I really want to appreciate that. It was really nice.
They were very happy to see when you came up to visit, Vic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a talk of the town.
Yep. I've been here since 1970, 46 years, raised my family here in this town. And when I first moved in, I was involved in the politics in the old basement downstairs in the old town hall, and when the building department was across the street by the tire place over there. So, I've been here a long time. I had something happen to me just recently when I came home from the hospital, and it kind of upset me. And I did a little homework before I came in to speak to the town about it. I got my assessment last year. I went to grievance last year and grieved my taxes because 20 years ago, I built my house on Sheaf Road. But at that point, it was owned, the quarry behind me was owned by Lone Star. Then New York Trap Rock, and then Lone Star. Then it switched over to Tilcon. Once Tilcon took over, they didn't push the gravel down the river anymore. They started coming out with trucks. So it became not the ideal place to have a house because the truck traffic got worse. Then they moved the asphalt plant from the mobile home park and moved it down in the back because they were ruining all the people's cars and had to pay for paint jobs on the cars and everything. So now, before 10 o'clock in the morning, I get over 100 trucks past my house, in and out. So there's 200 vehicles. Before 10 o'clock in the morning, the asphalt plant starts up, and if it's cool in the morning, the smoke comes right up and smokes your house out, and there's no birds. So it's not the ideal spot for a home anymore. So I grieved my taxes and said, listen, it's not the ideal place. It would be another neighborhood. So they lowered my taxes. The board listened to me and lowered my taxes. At that point, I was just starting to have a problem with the cancer, and I could barely walk. And I went in, and I grieved the taxes. While I'm in the hospital, and I come back home the end of May, and my son was paying the bills and things like that. And then I go through my mail, and they up my assessment. I grieved them last year to get them down, and they turned around and upped my assessment back up $30,500. I think it's like, do I have to grieve my taxes every year? I thought it was just a total injustice. And then when I came to town, she says, there's nothing I could do. You missed a grievance. She says, it's all done by the state. So I didn't have any information. I asked for a phone number for the state. So I had to do a lot of research on my own. So I finally got somebody in the state. They said, no, it's the town and the county. But basically, it's the town assessor. So before I opened my mouth up, I went to 3 other towns in Dutchess County, and they shook their heads. And then I went out of the county. I went to Putnam County and talked to them, and they were a little beside themselves. They said, and I said, the person knows me. So I was kind of upset over the whole thing. And what bothered me the most is that while I'm talking to Kathy Tabor, she says to me, oh, well, there's always next year, and with a smirk on her face. I was rather offended by it, and at the same time, she knew I was sick and knew that I was sick when I did the grievance. I could barely walk because they had to help me up out of the chair at the grievance. I don't know. I talked to other people in town. One person got assessed over $80,000 more. How do you get your property value goes up $80,000 in this poor economy? Another person, $60,000 up. I'm saying, you can't sell the property for this money. And so I figured I would just bring it to your attention. And I don't know, I've known her for a long time. She was always polite to me and everything, and I was polite to her. I was very upset and everything. I was a gentleman to her, but I don't know. I think maybe her time is run out, and we have another Kathy and other people in the assessor's office that can do a great job, because I don't know if she's in touch with the real world and what's out there right now. I hate to see other elderly people that are in a nursing home or in their own home that they don't read the mail, they don't see it, and they have to decide on whether they're going to pay the taxes or put a new roof on the house or buy oil for the furnace. I mean, $30,000 is a lot to go up 1 year, make your house valuable, $30,000. But how about my friends who are $80,000, another one $60,000, and one person got their assessment down the year before, and then it turned around and went right back up $60,000. And I'm saying, this is not right. You can't see it. You can't see it in the paper. So I wanted to bring it to the attention of all the residents that are watching, and all you council people, that there's a total injustice. I asked the state and I asked the county, isn't there anything in there that's set there that, in other words, all right, you have your taxes lowered, you grieve your taxes, that you're good for 3 years or 2 years or 5 years, that leave you alone? And they said it's all up to the assessor. So basically, there's nothing you can do. It's all up to her. And after the point of the grievance, they can't turn it around unless there was a mistake done. I think this is a mistake. If I grieved it last year and had it down, why do I have to get it slammed back into my face again this year? And everybody in this town knew. I mean, highway department people were calling up the house and leaving notes on my door. I mean, the whole town was very compassionate. But that little smile and, well, better luck next year. And, well, if you can't afford it, sell it. I was just offended by it, and I just thought that I should speak my mind and tell you what my feelings are. Because if I don't tell you, you'll never know.
That's fine.
Agreed, Vic, and I will readdress it tomorrow. You had more than what we discussed that day.
Yeah.
So I will readdress it in the morning.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the kind letters and everything from everybody. I'm a part of this town, and I expect to be a part of this town, and my son lives in this town. And, I've paid a lot of taxes over the years on land and stuff that I own and houses that I've owned. And I think I've paid my dues.
You've been a good part of the town.
Well, Kathy does a great job for the town, too. So it may have just been a circumstance or just a misunderstanding, but the supervisor said he's going to look into it and he'll address it. But she does a very good job.
We understood Vic's feeling, and
that's
as
it.
far
I
as
can
flagging it and things like that, but I didn't realize.
Bring it to
I
our
will dig
attention.
a little deeper.
If there's a mistake, we'll try to correct it.
Yeah, I'm looking for other people that don't see it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, before they realize it, the taxes are bigger than their mortgage, or they can't afford to fix the front porch, or or buy oil for the house.
Vic, many years we've been here, and I haven't heard too many of those situations. So I think that as a whole, most people are fine. Sounds like it was a mistake. Supervisors are going to look into it, and we appreciate bringing it to our attention.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not my point, but she does a very, very good job for us. And
I just had to get well enough to come up here.
Good.
I got braces on my legs and stuff, so I'm happy to be back in the picture.
We're happy to see you back, Vic.
Yep.
Anybody else like to address the board?
Hi, we have three more of us tonight to talk about the TPP. You have a handout on your desk with a sample resolution against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. My name is Charles Davenport. I'm from Wappingers Falls. We're using this council's time to ask you to take action to protect your constituents against the depredations of national trade policy, specifically the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, a free trade agreement involving the United States and 11 other Pacific Rim countries. Now, the citizens of Poughkeepsie, let's face it, they expect to be taken care of by their elected officials. Average citizens don't want to be concerned with the complexities and boring details of budgeting, street repair, zoning, that are concerned about floodplains, but they're not experts in these fields and they don't want to be. Usually you'll only hear from them if they have a problem with individual potholes at tax time when their streets aren't plowed. And our citizens aren't interested in or even aware of the formulation and complexities of national trade policy. Unfortunately, in this area, their elected representatives on the national level have been failing them for the past 40 years. Now, the most dangerous provision of these free trade deals, such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership and NAFTA, are the Investor State Dispute Settlements, ISDS provisions, which give away national, state, and local sovereignty. If there's a potential threat to corporate profits, ISDS provisions give foreign corporations the right to sue in supranational corporate courts and overturn national, state, and local governments. That's right, corporate courts that overrule our national Supreme Court. Under these provisions, local governments could face challenges to their ability to pass buy local or buy American regulations and to protect locally owned businesses, limit urban sprawl, or protect the city's health and environment by excluding polluting industries or industrial overuse of water. Now, I have several Revolutionary War ancestors, and I'm going to mention their names just to memorialize them. I see we have colonial flags here. Well, Sage Churchill, Nathaniel Churchill, David Mather, Thomas McClune, Thomas Slade, Henry Hatcher, Jonathan Allen, Captain Samuel Hinman were all ancestors, direct ancestors of mine who fought in the Revolution. Oh, and not to mention Oliver Stone, who marched 30 miles from his home to fight in the Battle of Lexington at 14 years old. Now, these guys, they fought for the right to be governed by laws made by their own elected representatives, not kings, foreign nations, or corporate stockholders. Yeah, that's right. That tea that was thrown into Boston Harbor was owned by the British East India Corporation. Now, if we had guys in red coats marching up and down the streets, I'd have no problem getting you up in arms, literally. Unfortunately, the enemy nowadays sits in corporate boardrooms, wears suits, ties, and they carry briefcases loaded with money. So we have to, I'm leaving it to you, I'm asking you to not cede these rights, our American rights, to corporate empires. I'm asking the town board to pass a non-binding resolution designating the town of Poughkeepsie as a TPP-free zone and send it to all appropriate representatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing
Maria
it.
Quackenbush will speak now.
I won't be able to read this unless I take that off. Whoops. Okay, my name is Maria Quackenbush, and this is definitely not something I usually do. I've never really been involved in anything political in my life, except for the past few months, because this TPP business really scares me. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is a 5,554-page document with 30 chapters. It was negotiated in virtual secrecy by corporate lawyers for the benefit of supranatural corporations. The actual document would be incomprehensible to those who are not corporate lawyers, with a specialty in international trade agreements. The document was not designed to be read by the general public. So what can ordinary citizens such as you and I and everyone else base their opinions on? We must rely upon the opinions of those whom we trust and respect and have the resources to formulate an opinion. People such as Elizabeth Warren, Robert Reich, Nobel Prize winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, the Sierra Club, other environmental organizations, labor unions, political organizations, but we also may consult conservatives, such as Senator Sessions, Republican from Alabama, and Congressman Chris Gibson, right here in our area, Republican New York CD19, he's my congressman, who are in opposition to the TPP. We may rely on history, self-evident truth, and common sense. For instance, every trade deal since the opening of trade with China in 1979 has contributed to economic disruption in this country and the worsening of the condition of the average middle-class American and Poughkeepsie residents, because we're not immune. For instance, does anyone think that putting American workers into wage competition with slave laborers or workers making 65 cents an hour to $2 an hour will work to the betterment of American workers or those in Poughkeepsie? Does anyone think that paying for internet services the American public now receives for free will be to the benefit of Americans and Poughkeepsie residents? Does anyone think that paying higher prices for drugs, and personally, my thyroid medication used to cost $5. It's $53 now in less than 2 years. Can you imagine what's going to happen if TPP goes through? I lost my place, I got upset. Hold on a second. Does anyone think that paying higher prices for drugs due to extension of years of copyright protection will be to the benefit of Americans or Poughkeepsie residents? We urge the Poughkeepsie Town Board to please lend its voice to the opposition of this threat to the environment, living standards, and general welfare of Americans posed by the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We know you can't necessarily stop TPP from passing yourselves, but you can make your voices heard. And know that you're there to try to help us because we're in this together. TPP-free and anti-fast track resolutions have been passed by dozens of communities, including Orange County, New York, right down the road, Tompkins County, New York, New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Pittsburgh, St. Paul, Minnesota, Madison, Wisconsin, Berkeley, California, Mahoning County, Ohio, Bellingham, Washington, Richmond, California, and Hollywood, California. We need you to do this, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Mike Wagenbush. I'm related to Maria. I have just a few examples of what happens when corporations rule the world. Under investor-state dispute settlement provisions of NAFTA, there are $38 billion in pending claims between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. In addition to this $38 billion, a recent claim by TransCanada Corporation is asking for $15 billion from the United States in compensation under NAFTA for lost profits because of President Obama's veto of TransCanada's Keystone XL pipeline project. The World Trade Organization ruled against the U.S. country of origin meat labeling regulations between USA, Mexico, and Canada, which required a labeling of pork and beef products sold in this country. And while the Paris Agreement on climate change has been hailed as the world's greatest diplomatic success, under the TPP, supranational corporations will still have a free hand in doing things that will result in accelerated climate change. Whatever carbon production restrictions are enacted, business entities will ignore them because under ISDS provisions, these restrictions will threaten their profits. U.S. companies have moved to Mexico and other third world countries not only to get away with paying lower wages, but also primarily maybe to avoid environmental regulations. Approval of the Trans-Pacific Partnership will allow corporations to ignore environmental regulations, and particularly in more sensitive areas, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Chile, and Peru. Besides destroying the local environment, we cannot expect any corporations doing business in these countries to honor any agreement to limit the carbon pollution which contributes to global warming and rising sea levels. What will Poughkeepsie's waterfront areas look like at high tide after another 30, 50, or 100 years of climate change. In 30 to 50 years, the Poughkeepsie Town Board will very possibly be facing an immediate problem. How many millions should Poughkeepsie invest in seawalls to preserve low-lying areas? How should the town of Poughkeepsie replace tax revenues lost due to property now literally underwater? We believe that the actions of the Poughkeepsie Town Board in 2016 can help prevent this future problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the board?
Hi. I'll be brief. My name is Pam Kremski. You're going to learn everything you always wanted to know and probably more about the TPP tonight, more than you wanted to know, but it's important. So President Obama's ultimate argument for the TPP is that we needed to counter China's influence in the region because we don't want China to write the rules. Is President Obama talking about economic influence? China was granted most favored status, trade status in 1979, so that's not it. Since then, thanks to the efforts of the USA, the Chinese economy has grown to be the second most powerful in the world. We currently have trade agreements with all of the TPP countries except Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Sultanate of, I don't think I pronounced this right, Brunei. Is this massive agreement needed to trade with these countries whose combined economies constitute 1% of the world's gross domestic product? Is the president talking about military influence? Is there a need for military bases in Malaysia, Vietnam, and Brunei? Is there any scenario in which China would risk a hot war with the United States, who's the principal source of its wealth and who owes it hundreds of billions of dollars? The leaders of China are capitalists. They're not crazy and they're not stupid. P.S. China's been invited to be admitted to the TPP in the future without congressional approval under living arrangement provisions. PPS, the president just lifted a 50-year embargo on weapons sales to Vietnam without a massive trade agreement in place. Well, Sherlock Holmes said, if you've eliminated all the other possibility, what remains must be the truth. The truth that remains is that the Trans-Pacific Partnership offers no benefit to American workers, no benefit to American prescription drug users, no benefit to American internet users, and it overrides the American Constitution. What remains is the fact that it benefits some exporters and supranational corporations. The Trans-Pacific Partnership and the free trade agreements of the past 20 years are, in reality, simply massive giveaways for corporations. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP, in fact, was negotiated in secret with the advice and consent of more than 500 corporate advisors and with no input whatsoever from Congress, who is charged by the Constitution to regulate commerce with foreign nations. So, who is writing the rules, Mr. President? Corporations with no allegiance to anyone or the elected representatives of the American people? Our Constitution begins with "we the people." Its purpose is to promote the general welfare of the people, not to establish or support any other form of domination over them, including corporate domination. As citizens concerned with protecting American liberty and American economic well-being, we are asking the town board for help in that task. Please pass a non-binding resolution declaring the town of Poughkeepsie to be a TPP-free zone and lend the voice of the people of Poughkeepsie to the opposition to this trade deal, which is an affront to everything we as Americans stand for. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your time. Anybody else that would like to address the board? If nobody else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.